The pattern you don't see. Have you ever looked back at a relationship and wondered, why did I let them in? Not just once, again and again. You open your heart to someone and they drain you. You trust and they lie. You give and they disappear. And what hurts the most is not that they fooled you. It's that you saw the red flags and still stayed. You told yourself, maybe they'll change. They just need love. They didn't mean it. But what if the question isn't why they hurt you? What if the real question is, why do you keep choosing the same kind of person? Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Let that sink in, because this is not fate. This is your shadow, the part of you you've never met, but that knows everything about you. You see, we're taught to look outward when something goes wrong, blame them, cut them off, find someone better. But what if the solution isn't outside? What if the answer lives in the part of you you've been avoiding, that voice you silence, the feeling in your gut you ignore, the recurring pain you dress up as coincidence? Why do I keep ending up here? Maybe because a part of you doesn't want healing. It wants familiarity, even if it hurts, because the truth is, we don't attract what we want. We attract what we are. Jung called this the shadow, the hidden self, the wounds, the shame, the parts you deny, suppress, or pretend aren't there. And until you meet your shadow, you'll keep choosing people who mirror it. That emotionally unavailable partner, maybe they reflect the part of you that still fears closeness. That narcissist, maybe they echo the version of you who believes you have to earn love. You don't fall for them by accident. You fall for them because on some level they feel familiar. So let me ask you something hard. When was the last time you sat with your pain without trying to fix it, without blaming others, without numbing it with distractions? When did you last ask yourself, what part of me keeps calling this in? That's where the transformation begins. And yes, it's uncomfortable, painful even, because healing isn't light and peace and positivity. Healing starts in the dark, in the uncomfortable silence where your shadow lives. But here's the thing, your shadow isn't your enemy. It's the part of you that tried to survive, that built walls when you were hurt, that shut down to stay safe, that said yes when it meant no because it was terrified of being left behind. And now it's asking to be seen, to be heard, not judged, not fixed, just witnessed. If any part of this resonates, don't push it away. Take a breath. Pause the video, close your eyes for 10 seconds. Ask yourself, what part of me have I been running from? Then come back. We're just getting started. How your shadow shapes your relationships. You were not born choosing pain. You didn't wake up one day and decide, I want to fall for someone who will leave me empty. But somewhere along the way you learned that love comes with conditions, that attention must be earned, that silence is safer than speaking up, that losing yourself is better than being alone, and that became your programming. Carl Jung believed that the shadow forms when we push parts of ourselves into the dark, because someone told us they were too much, too emotional, too needy, too soft, too angry. And so you split. A part of you kept performing, pleasing, smiling, and the other part, it went into hiding. But here's the tragedy. What goes into the shadow doesn't disappear. It just waits. And it speaks, not with words, but with patterns. You keep choosing people who validate your unconscious wounds. Why? Because your shadow is trying to resolve what was never resolved. It believes if I can finally get this person to love me, maybe I'll prove I'm enough. If I can make them stay, maybe I'll prove I'm not unworthy. But this is a trap. You're not choosing love. You're choosing familiarity. You're choosing what your nervous system calls home, even when that home feels like chaos. Let me ask you this. Who hurt you first? Whose silence taught you that your voice was a burden? Whose criticism made you believe that love is earned? Whose absence trained you to tolerate emotional starvation? Because until you meet that pain, you'll keep finding versions of it in other people. You'll call it love. You'll say they're complicated or they're misunderstood. But what's really happening is this. Your shadow is reenacting its old story, hoping this time the ending will be different. But it won't. Not until you choose differently. So how do you change the pattern? First, you stop blaming the other person. They're not your salvation. They're not your punishment. They're your mirror. Every time someone triggers you, they're pointing to a part of you that still hurts. Not to shame you, not to punish you, but to wake you up. Take a moment. Think of someone who left you shattered. Now ask yourself, not why did they hurt me? What did I believe about myself that let them stay? That's your shadow speaking, and it's ready to be heard. In the next part, we'll talk about what happens when you stop chasing validation and start reclaiming the parts of yourself you once gave away. Because healing isn't about getting better, it's about becoming whole. Stop chasing the love you never got. You've spent years trying to be enough, for partners who only loved the version of you that didn't need much, for friends who disappeared the moment you had needs, for family who praised your silence more than your truth. And now, when someone finally sees your pain, you don't know how to let them in, because you've learned that love is something you earn, not something you deserve. But Jung reminds us, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And that's what we do every time we choose another emotionally unavailable person. Every time we chase, explain, overgive. We avoid our own soul. We abandon ourselves to avoid being abandoned. You think you're being loyal, but you're betraying the only person who will stay with you for the rest of your life, you. Let me tell you a quiet truth. You cannot heal a childhood wound with adult relationships. You cannot fix your past by overgiving in your present. You cannot outrun loneliness by staying with people who make you feel alone. What you call love may actually be self-abandonment dressed in romantic intensity. You crave their attention not because they're right for you, but because they trigger the part of you that still believes you're hard to love. And that belief, that's the real enemy. Not the person, not the heartbreak, the belief. Because once you accept the lie, you'll build your entire life trying to disprove it. You'll exhaust yourself proving you're worthy. You'll silence yourself to avoid conflict. You'll lower your standards just to feel seen. But here's the paradox.
The more you betray yourself, the more invisible you become. Jung called this losing the self in the persona, becoming the version of you the world wants and forgetting who you truly are. But the people meant for your truth will never ask you to hide it. Right now, think of one moment, just one, when you said yes to someone while screaming no inside. That moment didn't just cost you time, it cost you self-trust. Write it down, face it, not to blame yourself, but to reclaim yourself. Because the shadow isn't healed through thinking, it's healed through honesty. In Part 4, we'll talk about how to set boundaries that protect your soul and how silence can become your most powerful answer. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet refusal to abandon yourself ever again.
Boundaries are how you reclaim yourself. You were taught that love means staying, that kindness means saying yes, that being good means being available, even when it hurts. But what if that's not love? What if that's just the shadow of your past, masquerading as virtue? Carl Jung believed that to become whole, you must reclaim the parts of yourself you've given away. Not in anger, not in rebellion, but in truth. And that begins with boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors with locks. You choose who enters. But if you're like most people who always choose the wrong ones, your door has been wide open for years, to anyone, at any time, for any reason. You say yes before you think. You stay when everything in you says leave. You explain yourself to people who never really listen. Why? Because deep down, you believe that protecting yourself is selfish. But let me offer you a truth that might sting. Every time you say yes to what hurts you, you say no to the part of you that's trying to heal. Jung wrote that the unconscious speaks in emotions, patterns, dreams. So when you feel drained after spending time with someone, that's not drama, that's data. When your chest tightens before responding to a message, that's not rudeness, that's resistance. When you feel the urge to justify, defend, explain, that's not love. That's fear trying to keep the peace. Your shadow knows this. It knows how you abandon yourself to avoid conflict, and it wants you to stop. Here's the paradox. The moment you finally choose yourself, some people will say you've changed, and they'll be right. You've stopped making yourself smaller just so they can stay comfortable. Right now, name one boundary you've never had the courage to set. Not to anyone else, just to yourself. Say it out loud. Write it if you need to. Feel the discomfort. That's growth. Because sometimes growth looks like this: a message left unread, a dinner declined, a silence not explained, a no without guilt. That's not selfishness. That's self-respect. In the final part, we'll talk about what happens when you stop chasing love and start becoming it, when you stop looking for someone to complete you and start becoming whole on your own. Becoming the love you were searching for. At some point, you have to stop asking, why did they leave? Why wasn't I enough? Why does this keep happening to me? And start asking, why do I abandon myself so easily? Because the deeper truth is this: the pain wasn't in the leaving. It was in the self-betrayal that came before it. The part of you that stayed too long, that gave too much, that said,
"It's fine," when it was bleeding inside. Carl Jung taught that real transformation doesn't come from fixing the world. It comes from integrating the self, and that includes your shadow, not pushing it away, not pretending it's gone, but sitting with it, understanding why it formed, listening to what it needs. That anxious part of you, it once protected you from neglect. That jealous part, it remembers being compared. That angry part, it never got a chance to speak. Your shadow is not your enemy. It's your emotional memory. And it's asking for your compassion, not your criticism. You keep choosing the wrong people because they activate the wound you still refuse to love in yourself. You crave healing but run from intimacy. You want to be seen but fear exposure. You long for truth but settle for performance. And here's the hardest truth of all. You cannot receive a love you do not believe you deserve. So what does healing look like? It's not a grand moment. It's not falling in love with someone new. It's this, saying, "I don't owe anyone my peace," leaving a table where love is conditional, listening to your silence without trying to fill it, forgiving yourself for not knowing better. Healing is becoming the person you kept waiting for. Pause for a second. Close your eyes. Picture the younger version of you, the one who didn't know how to ask for love, who confused attention with worth, who thought they had to earn everything. Now say this: you didn't deserve the pain, but you do deserve peace. Say it again if you need to. Let that version of you hear it, because maybe that's all they were waiting for. In the final part, we'll talk about the life that opens when you stop chasing and start living, when you stop apologizing and start owning who you are. This is where the story shifts, not because someone saves you, but because you finally stop abandoning yourself. When you finally choose yourself. There comes a moment, not with fireworks or applause, but with stillness, when you finally stop waiting. Not for their apology, not for the perfect partner, not for the past to make sense. You stop waiting for someone to save you, because you realize you were the one you were waiting for. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who they raised you to be, not who you became to survive, not who they admire because you stay quiet, but who you are when no one's watching, when no one is approving, when no one is clapping. Who are you without the performance? Because that's the self that chooses peace over validation, truth over safety, freedom over familiarity. And that version of you, that's where your second life begins. You spent years rehearsing love. Now it's time to live it. But this time, not through someone else, not in their eyes, not in their arms, in yours. You are the one who stays. You are the one who protects. You are the one who listens. And maybe that was the point all along, not to be saved, but to become your own sanctuary. You will be misunderstood, because your truth will unsettle those addicted to your silence. You will lose people, because your boundaries will feel like betrayal to those who benefited from your absence. You will grieve, not just others, but the old self, the one who begged, over-explained, waited. But what you gain is everything you thought love would give you and never did. This is not the end of the story. It's the beginning, not of perfection, but of presence. You will still have doubts. There will still be wounds. But now you'll meet them with truth instead of performance, with silence instead of explanation, with love instead of longing. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, don't let it stay as just a moment. Make it a movement. In the comments write, "I choose myself," not as a quote, as a declaration, as a commitment to never again leave your side. And if you know someone who's still stuck in the same loop, send this to them, not to convince them, but to remind them they are not alone in this. We're in this together. A community of people willing to burn the old script to write one that finally tells the truth.
People are mirrors. What are they showing you?
You say, they lied, they changed, they used me. But Jung taught something radical. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. What if the people you attract aren't just random? What if they're reflections, not of who you want to be, but of who you're still at war with? The person who ghosted you, they reflect your fear of being forgotten. The one who couldn't love you fully, they reflect the way you still love yourself halfway. The partner who manipulated you, they reflect the part of you that doubts your own reality. We attract not what we deserve, but what we believe we deserve. And beliefs are stubborn. They live in the shadow. They disguise themselves as personality, as this is just how I am. But it's not who you are. It's who you became in order to survive love that was never safe. Jung called this projection. We don't see people as they are. We see them through the lens of our wounds. And that's why healing isn't just internal. It's relational. You don't heal your shadow by sitting alone in silence. You heal it when someone triggers you, and instead of reacting, you pause and ask, what are they showing me about me? This is not about blame. It's about ownership. When you reclaim your projections, you reclaim your power. You stop saying, they made me feel unworthy, and start saying, I felt unworthy, and they activated it. That's sovereignty. That's the beginning of true self-respect. Here's a journal prompt for tonight, and don't rush it. Who in my life triggers me the most? And what part of me do they reflect? Write it raw. Write it messy. Then read it out loud. Because seeing your patterns is the first step in breaking them. This awareness doesn't mean you won't feel pain again, but now you'll know how to hold it, not as a punishment, but as a message, from yourself to yourself. You were never broken, you were fragmented, and now, piece by piece, you're becoming whole.